Hello, everybody. Today, I'll be speaking with Aaron Silverbook. Aaron is the founder of Bioworks, a company producing biotechnology that may cure cavities. Well, Aaron, welcome to the filing cabinet.
Hey.
So, my understanding is that your company is basically about reducing, stopping people from getting cavities. I'm kind of aware that cavity is like a bad thing that happens to your teeth, but that's like actually about as much as I know. So, what is a cavity?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, Daniel. I'm afraid that I don't. Well, okay. So the very simple explanation, I guess, that everyone learns in grade school is that Streptococcus mutans is the primary cavity-causing mouth bacteria. Lives on your teeth, spins a little biofilm, eats sugar, craps lactic acid, and that acid gradually erodes divots, holes into your teeth.
Okay. And the cavities are just holes in your teeth.
Yeah, it's a cavity in your teeth, one might say.
Okay.
So the thing that we are trying to do is there's this cool technology that has been around forever. 1985, they discovered the precursor strain. What it does is a single one-time painting of the bacteria onto the teeth will basically prevent you from getting cavities. And the way that works is our variant of Streptococcus mutans is instead of secreting lactic acid, it secretes ethanol.
Okay.
In addition, it has a wild-type mutation that causes it to secrete Mutusin 1140, which is a natural bacteriocin, which allows it to outcompete the native streptomutans in the mouth.
Sorry, a natural bacteriocin? What is that?
It's a mild antibiotic.
Okay.
It's a lantibiotic, technically, which, look it up. It's a real word. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a dentist, and I'm going to say that a couple times during this. But and then it has a third knockout to reduce horizontal gene transmission to make it more genetically stable and less likely to revert into either a lactic acid secreting other variant or pick up anything we don't want.
Cool. I actually just have a bunch of questions about this whole process.
Yeah, man.
As a fellow non-dentist. So you said that these cavities, they're caused by Streptococcus mutans, which basically eats some of the sugar that I eat.
Yep.
And metabolizes it into lactic acid, which is an acid, and I guess acids erode stuff. That's basically the story. So one, and you said it formed a biofilm? What is that?
So streptomutans, its one weird trick, as I understand it, is that it's very good at attaching to the tooth surface. That's its ecological niche. It attaches to the tooth surface. It spins a little dextrin igloo over itself, I guess. Just like a little hat, a little bunker that it lives in that keeps it from being washed away via saliva, via, brushing.
Okay. So it's just got this, something like a sac that's like attached to that attaches to the tooth, and the bacterium lives inside the sac?
Yeah, pretty much.
Are we talking like one bacterium per sac, or?
There's going to be multiple layers of streptomutans on the tooth. They're like double parked, triple parked there. And some of them are going to adhere really well to the tooth surface, and some of them are going to adhere kind of to each other.
Okay.
But it's going to be a whole wall of them just on there. And brushing is not going to get them all. You really need, like, at the dentist when they do the cleaning, they have that special Profi cup, the little rubber cup that they dip into the pumice spread, and then that mechanical debridement just strips off even to the base layer the bacteria. Okay.
When I brush my teeth,
you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. So I use an electric toothbrush. I do it for like 2 minutes or whatever.
Cool.
What fraction of these am I getting off?
I have no idea. I would guess. Oh God, 90 plus. But I want to emphasize how not a dentist I am and how that's a guess.
Okay. Nobody knows. And I guess bacteria multiply
really fast.
Yeah. They make these huts. What are the huts made out of? That like
dextrin.
Dextrin. What is that?
A sugar.
Okay. So there's this type of sugar that like just attaches really well to my teeth. How does it do that?
These are all really good questions that a microbiologist or a dentist should answer.
Fair enough. So there's this bacterium. It attaches to people's teeth.
Yep.
And it basically, it sounds like this is basically the fermentation. like is this lactic acid fermentation, just like taking sugar and turning it into lactic acid?
As its primary metabolism, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's doing the equivalent of, I guess, making kimchi in my mouth. And unlike kimchi, I guess this is like bad for me. So I guess a related question is, my understanding is that not everyone gets cavities. For instance, actually, I personally, I just eat a bunch of sugary food, but I've never had a cavity.
Congratulations.
What's going on there?
Yeah. This is, I think, the area that I felt most gaslit by big dentistry in my research, in which like it looks like people have very different strains of S. mutans from each other in their mouth. And that's usually transmitted vertically from whoever your primary caregiver is, probably your mother. Okay. And you will end up getting basically her strain. So cavities tend to run in families where, you know, she's doing a here comes the airplane, spooning food into your mouth, and then she shows you how to eat it by eating a little bit of herself. Yeah. And then you end up with trace amounts of her saliva in your fully uncolonized mouth. And then you get her strain of Strep mutans, which is either very lactic acid secreting or not very lactic acid secreting, depending on your family.
Sure. Yeah, I actually have a friend who had a baby a few months ago, and he is just like licking the nipples of the bottles because he doesn't have cavities.
He and I actually talked about that. Yeah.
Oh, great. So if there are like all these different strains of Streptococcus mutans in different people's mouths, right? Like if you and I have different strains, is that just because like we haven't like French kissed yet, and if we did, then it would, or is it the fact that like our mouths are somehow different, such that like different strains would win the competition in our mouths?
That's something of a complicated topic that I don't feel like there is exactly a scientific consensus on. There are quite a few papers showing that horizontal transmission of S. mutans strains between people is not a thing that happens. Okay. There are a couple papers showing that it is a thing that happens.
Interesting.
I forget. Gosh, I've been referring to it as the Karger paper, but that's the publishing house, not the actual authors. There's one paper that has been really concerning me about horizontal transmission, where it suggests that married couples become concordant in their strains at about a 10% per couple per year rate. Okay. And one of the couples became discordant in their strains during that year as well.
So, sorry, when you say discordant, like
they
strains
had the
became
same
more
strains,
different?
And then the strains became different, yes.
Interesting.
So school children have less settled strains, so they are swapping strains more commonly. Okay. So my hypothesis here, and I want to emphasize, not a dentist, this is just me like doing a lit review and making a guess. My hypothesis is that the thing that is mostly causing people to exchange strains between themselves is not like the bacteria in the saliva, because the concentration in the saliva is actually very low, but rather like tooth strike, when your teeth click together, when you're kissing badly.
Oh, okay.
That seems to me like the sort of, I guess, meteoric impact that might actually exchange strata of bacteria.
Okay. And do we know like when there's horizontal transmission? Like, do we know what kinds of strains tend to win? Okay.
I don't.
All right. Yeah. I guess it's kind of an interesting question of like whether we could solve cavities by like tooth clicking enough, right?
There are, I would imagine that some strains are more fit for different mouth environments, like a strain that is very efficient at converting unprocessed sugar into lactic acid will certainly do better in the mouth of someone who is every day eating, I don't know, cotton candy, as opposed to Potato Jim, who only eats like more complex starches, or Paleo Pete, who only eats nuts and not berries, not even berries.
Sure. Yeah, sounds mysterious. So at the end, we talked about this new bacterium that you're interested in promoting / spreading, I guess. So you said that it had a few changes. Am I right that change 1 was that it metabolized sugar into alcohol rather than lactic acid?
Yep.
Change 2 was that it secreted
Mutusin 1140,
Okay.
a naturally arising antibiotic.
And change 3 was that it was like less likely to genetically
Yep.
drift. Okay, cool. So change 1, I guess we're doing a different kind of fermentation, like we're making I guess alcohol rather than kimchi.
Yep.
Yeah, how so, like that seems like a pretty significant change in the structure of the metabolism, right? Like I'm kind of surprised that
back when this was originally happening, Hillman, way back in 1985, I think first found the wild-type Mutusin secreting strain in one of his graduate students' mouths. As far as I can tell, he was doing just like shotgun bioprospecting, swabbing 100, 1,000 people, and seeing, is there anything interesting here?
Okay.
Found that, noticed, wow, this pretty reliably outcompetes other S-mutan strains once you swab it on. And it's not just spreading through kissing. I'll explain that in a bit.
Okay.
And at which point he thinks, I bet we can cure cavities with this, and spends about 20 years trying to convert it into something that doesn't cause cavities.
Sure.
They didn't have CRISPR at that time, so they were doing everything with zinc finger nuclease, which is kind of like trying to do surgery with hammers.
What is zinc finger nuclease?
It is an old technique for genetic manipulation of an organism. I used to know what it was.
Okay. But it's imprecise, it sounds like.
It's pretty imprecise and labor intensive.
Okay.
Yes.
So the wild type version, it was secreting this this small amount of basically antibiotic.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Okay. One question is like, if I'm a bacterium and I'm secreting antibiotic, doesn't that kill me?
If you are, I mean, we're humans and we're secreting poop. Doesn't that kill us? It's bad for, I don't know. In addition to some bacteria being more resistant to the antibiotic than others, it's also secreted in very trace amounts and sort of away from ourselves. Away from themselves, such that it ends up just sort of suppressing everything within, gosh, I forget what 10 microns of it, like some very small distance. It does not seem to impede itself very much.
Okay. And is that mostly just mechanically, like the mucin is going away from the secreting bacteria, or is the secreting bacteria immune to mucin? I guess you'd expect if you secrete mucin, you'd evolve some resistance to mucin.
You'd have some resistance to mucin. I would expect it is both, but I'm not confident in that.
Okay. So another question I had there is, it sounded like this dentist in 1985. He was able to pick up people's mouth bacteria from swabbing their mouths, right?
Yeah.
Does that suggest that, like, if I swabbed your mouth and then swabbed that in my onto my mouth, like, would that be a mechanism for, like, horizontal transmission?
Inoculation? The home field advantage for bacteria is very large. That would be, like, you need, gosh, the way that they apply their super bug smart Streptococcus mutans associated replacement therapy, the thing that has the 3 tweaks, the bacteria that we are interested in today. The way that they apply that is they concentrate it up to 10 to the 11 CFU, then colony forming units.
Okay.
And then after you get a dental cleaning, which includes like the Prophy cup and the pumice scrub and actually takes off the base layer of bacteria attached to your teeth, then you paint it on in such ridiculous density. 10 to the 11 is very high. Like in saliva, the concentration of S. mutans bacteria is going to be like 10 to the 6, maybe 10 to the 9 if you have an active cavity.
Okay. That's like in my whole mouth?
No, it's in like a sample.
In a sample. Okay.
Yeah. But if you are actively spitting into each other's mouths, you are not going to get a worrying concentration of bacteria, I wouldn't say.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the Mutusin. So the other change in this new strain is that it seems like it's just doing a totally different
metabolic pathway.
Metabolic pathway.
Yep.
Yeah. How like how do you change a bacterium to just metabolize totally differently?
So one of the really, gosh, Dr. Hillman is fond of this axiom that is apparently big among microbiologists, which is something like anything you want a bacteria to do, some bacteria is already doing it. The axiom of microbial infallibility. And so what they did was they found a bacteria which is already fermenting ethanol, Zymomonas mobilis, which is already used in a bunch of industrial applications for bioreactors fermenting ethanol. And they just copy pasted the ethanol metabolism in, and they knocked the lactic acid production out entirely.
So there's just like some portion of your genome that's the like, how do I do metabolism portion? And They just swapped it in?
Yep.
Okay.
LDH gene has been replaced with the ethanol production code block.
So, and I guess like, so it sounded like those bacteria were from different genera, like, but they still like had the same place in their genome that like, that coded for how they were going to do metabolism.
Place in their genome?
Or region. Like, it sounds like you took this region of the genome.
Yeah.
You swapped out the thing that tells you to do lactic acid fermentation, and you swapped in the thing that tells you to do alcohol fermentation.
Yes.
Which implies some sort of like cross-format compatibility of the genomes, right?
Yeah. Everyone's using DNA, which is pretty compatible with itself.
Okay. But like, so DNA codes for proteins, and then proteins do stuff. And I would imagine that like different proteins do different things in the presence of other different proteins, or is it just like way simpler than I think it is?
I'm never going to say that genetics or microbiology is way simpler than you think it is, but they have successfully made the transplantation. They messed with the promoters a little bit to encourage it to be active at different strengths. And I tell you, sir, that it works.
Okay.
It secretes ethanol. It doesn't secrete lactic acid. I don't know what to say beyond that.
Fair enough. So the third change that happened is like it somehow something was done that makes it less liable to mutate, right?
Yep.
How do you make a bacterium less liable to mutate?
I really wish I had boned up on that part.
Okay.
There's some competence stimulating peptide that is responsible for helping it to do horizontal gene transmission.
Sorry, what's you said a competent stimulating peptide?
Competence stimulating peptide. It's a not a very creative name. No offense to the biologists who I have no doubt worked very hard in investigating it. It makes it competent at doing horizontal gene transmission.
Okay.
And horizontal gene transmission is this thing where sometimes bacteria is very stressed or on the verge of death. And it's like, I'll do a Hail Mary. And it just sort of like looks around to see if there's any floating DNA that it can just incorporate. And it plug and play, sticks that in, runs it. And it's like, oh boy, I just got antibiotic resistance. I'm no longer going to die. Or it runs it and is like, I died. Dang. Bummer. That was the default outcome.
Okay.
And one of the things that we want to have it not do is that.
Yeah.
Because if it's dying and it finds like a lactic acid metabolism gene, that would be bad. If it suddenly if that like gives it the metabolic edge necessary to stay alive and like become a more competitive strain that has the antibiotic and also secretes lactic acid. However, we haven't seen that in the testing that has been done. And with horizontal gene transmission knocked out, it seems less likely. I can't give you I don't know how many years it would take to evolve or something. I can't give you like what does the reversion rate look like under deep time type guarantee. But for the people who have done longitudinal testing in their own mouths, the volunteers, it hasn't reverted in the last 20 years. And I have assurances that it's solid.
When you say it hasn't reverted, it makes it sound like you might expect it to revert. Is lactic acid fermentation, is that like more efficient in energy production or?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But the Mutusin should give it enough of a competitive edge that it doesn't need it.
Nice.
Or that it isn't like constantly being strained and pressured in that direction. And the horizontal gene transmission should make it much harder. Horizontal gene transmission knockout should make it much harder to revert.
Gotcha. So I think I kind of understand what this bacterium roughly is at this point. So you're basically saying that it reduces how much people get cavities. Mm-hmm. What's the effect size? Do people get 10% fewer cavities, 100% fewer cavities?
We have not seen a good longitudinal study. Well, we've not seen a large-scale longitudinal study of the test that they did for animal trials. I believe it was something like over 6 months, the rats had 50% reduction of cavities, and it didn't look like the bacteria had even fully colonized those rats' mouths yet.
Okay.
So the current expectation is that it takes about a year for the bacteria to fully colonize the mouths. And the current belief is that it may fully halt cavities.
Okay. So that sounds pretty exciting.
I'm pretty excited, yes.
Yeah. Another question I have is, so I've got all of these bacteria in my mouth. One thing they do is potentially give me cavities.
Yep.
Do they do anything else?
You have 100+ strains of bacteria in your mouth. They're doing all kinds of stuff in there.
Okay.
Their number one thing that they're doing is probably waging unending microbial warfare against each other to see who can control the juicy real estate in the mouth and be the one who gets to harvest all the sweet, sweet sugar sauce that floods in periodically.
Gotcha.
If there are commensalistic or mutualistic things that your mouth bacteria are doing, I'm not the person to answer that. There may be, similar to how like there's lactobacillus in the gut, which is helping you like manage your milk intake, helping you digest milk sugars. I don't expect that there is something like that happening in the mouth, but again, not sure. Okay. But it does not look like this bacteria messes with your overall oral microbiome.
Why not? I mean, I would expect that taking a mild oral antibiotic all the time would.
Yep. In addition to the fact that it's secreting the antibiotic in not quite homeopathic quantities, but like very, very low quantities. Also, the area of effect of it is, again, like 10 microns. You need to be very close to the bacteria to actually be disrupted by the Mutusin. And because our version of S. mutans lives on the tooth, the thing that's very, very close to it is other S. mutans living on the tooth.
Should I be thinking of like the tooth microbiome rather than the mouth-wide microbiome?
Honestly, yeah.
Okay.
I think this is one of those things where if you keep double-clicking and zooming in on it, it will be shockingly fractal in how different like the bacteria strains are in different areas of the mouth.
Sure. So hang on, you said that I had like 100+ strains of bacteria or types of bacteria in my mouth. Do we know like how many types of bacteria are on my teeth?
I think it is about 1, in that it is pretty hard for bacteria not S. mutans to live on your teeth.
Okay. But
don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Not entirely sure.
Is that just because my teeth are sort of like
smooth,
slippery and smooth?
Yeah.
Okay.
S. mutans is one weird trick. Like its competitive edge is that it can attach to the tooth surface pretty well.
Okay. And I guess that's rare for other bacteria.
Yes.
Gotcha. So another question I have. So you mentioned that like another type of bacteria people have is in their gut.
Sure. Will the Mutusin disrupt your gut microbiome?
Yeah, or like do bacteria go from one place to the other?
Bacteria do go from one place to the other, but S. mutans is not very good at living in the gut, and the pharmacokinetics of the Mutusin are such that it does not survive stomach acid very long. It has pretty poor staying power. This is actually what, like Origenics, the company that was originally working in this, when at one point they tried to pivot and make Mutusin their key product. So they spent years trying to develop Mutusin. And in addition to it being secreted only in biofilm and it being secreted in really trace amounts in biofilm, it's also a really pain in the ass antibiotic. It is not very stable. It does not have great pharmacokinetics. And it's just secreted in such tiny amounts that first, in the animal trials, we did not see any disruption in the gut microbiome. And I would not expect much to get into the gut.
Gotcha. I guess I now kind of want to talk about the history. So you've alluded to like somebody. Oh, their name began with H in 1985.
Dr. Jeffrey Hillman. Yeah.
Yeah. So why? So if this was developed in 1985,
why don't we have it?
Yeah. Why are we talking about it now? What happened?
That question has filled me with a sort of burning dissatisfaction for 7 years now, Daniel. Ever since way back in the day when my biologist girlfriend and I were reading PubMed papers one late romantic evening, like you do, and came across this in 2017 or whatever, and were like, oh my God, why don't we have this cure for cavities? Yeah, it is a bit of a rocky road for trying to get this out. So in 1985, they discovered the organism. They spent 20-ish years like putting in the changes that we talked about. They upregulated the mutusin production by about 3x. They got the horizontal gene transmission knockout, and they eventually did get the Z-mobilus ethanol gene knocked in.
Okay.
They tried for a long time to make it not secrete anything, but the organism has to poop something. So they settled on the least harmful thing, which is like very trace amounts of ethanol.
Okay.
At that point, I don't want to talk too much about Origenics because they're an active company, and I want to be polite and diplomatic in what I say about them.
But just basics, what is the relationship of Origenics to Dr. Hillman or this research?
I believe that he founded the company way back in the day and then was no longer CEO of that company. Origenics started doing animal trials on this. They set up a human trial on this. Pfizer made them a buyout offer for all of the replacement therapy stuff for $64 million, I believe. They went to the FDA, said, we are ready to go. Please bless us. The FDA, it was 2003. They were like kind of scared of GMO organisms, at least much more like leery about them than they are now.
Okay.
The FDA said, sure, do it. We want you to find a big human trial. You need to have healthy, I forget what the exact range was, 18 to 50-year-olds who live alone, not near a school zone, no romantic partner, and have fully removable teeth.
Okay.
That last part being a difficult criteria to meet.
Oh, wait, was that a real criterion?
That's a real criteria, yeah.
Oh, why is that a criterion?
Because this bacteria is hard to remove.
Okay.
And although they installed a kill switch on it, the dealanine knockout, the bacteria is still such a pain in the ass to remove that it is plausible that it never falls off once you have it.
Wait, okay, wait. I have two questions now. Sorry, what's the dealanine knockout?
Yeah, they set up a kill switch, as is kind of common in pharmaceuticals trials, where they modify the organism such that it needs to exogenously supplement some kind of amino acid in order to stay alive. Okay. They make its metabolism just kind of messed up such that it has some critical deficiency. It can't metabolize alanine on its own or something, and you need to sip the amino acid mouthwash twice a day to keep it alive.
Okay, and is this part of the like main thing that your company would offer, or was this just for running this trial?
This was just for purposes of running human trials. Yeah. Okay. So they set that up, but still worrying to have to try and remove this once you get it on your teeth because it is very persistent.
Okay.
That is by design, that you only have to apply it once. It will stay on forever. It will prevent cavities forever. This is all the design of it. These claims are not evaluated by the FDA.
Okay. And wait, my second question is like, I would have thought that fully removable teeth would look pretty different to normal teeth.
In terms of like, will Streptococcus mutans even live on those teeth?
And do they get cavities? And
well, some
just in most ways, really.
Yeah, some dentures are made with real teeth.
Okay.
Second off, for a safety trial, it's not critical that you test the efficacy of this thing in preventing cavities. I want to again emphasize that it seemed to prevent cavities in the animal trial.
Okay.
But yeah.
But I imagine that like there are ways that my teeth can be harmed that
Denture
dentures
teeth
cannot.
cannot?
For instance, my teeth are attached to my actual gums, and dentures,
Are only glued in, yes.
okay. Does that even succeed at properly testing the safety?
This is what the FDA wanted them to do.
Okay. So, all right. So those are the diversions from the story. But the FDA asked Origenics to do this trial in 2003, and then what happened?
Origenics could not find a human cohort large enough. They called 1,000 people. They put newspaper ads out. They said, "We really want to come rub a paste on your teeth. Anyone interested?" And they got like 15 respondents, most of whom were actually disqualified for one reason or another.
Okay.
And so they ran like a tiny, tiny human trial. And the FDA was like, "That's not large enough."
Okay.
At which point it looks like Pfizer withdrew the offer, saying like, "Well, if this is what the FDA is going to be putting you through, we don't want to try that either." At which point Origenics pivoted to their work in the antibiotic, trying to commercialize Mutusin. And then years passed and the patent expired.
Okay. So going back a bit, like, or speaking of this trial, I would have thought that it would be potentially pretty commercially valuable to have a cure for cavities.
You'd think, right?
Could you, like, if so, one approach that suggests itself to me is paying people to take part in this trial.
Mm-hmm.
Is that allowed in safety trials? Or, like, why not try that?
I would have to talk to my FDA guy about that. I assume that they were offering to pay people for part of the trials.
Okay.
Keep in mind that in like 2003 or whenever they ran this, it was not, the internet was a little bit younger and you couldn't really blast out a huge ad. So they sat down, they had someone like making cold calls on the phone, basically. They ran the newspaper ads. It was just harder to get in touch with 1,000 people with fully removable teeth at that point.
Okay.
Perhaps they should have tried going to, I don't know, the We All Quit Smoking After Oral Cancer convention, but I don't know.
DentureCon 2003.
The very same.
Sure. So I'm curious, like, how this is a bit of a broader question, but like if this product is being hampered in this way, like I'm curious, like, how many other similar potentially useful biotech products are similarly held back.
Thousands.
Okay.
I think that I don't want to preach to the choir too much here when I say FDA delendo est, but I imagine most of our listeners are on the page of the FDA is harming more people than it helps by making these $500 million 10-year moats on novel drug discoveries.
It's hard for me to know, but it's possible that many of our listeners feel that way. Yeah. So this is the story of so far we've got the story of Origenics up to 2003. Then at some point you become interested in doing this. How did that happen? How did you pick this rather than the perhaps thousands of other similar things that you could have picked?
This is the one that I heard about first, probably just serendipity with regards to me and my biologist girlfriend at the time happened to be reading the PubMed papers. I really got a bug in my ass about this and really felt like, wait, I think I can do it, though. I think I can hire sketchy biohacker labs out of Singapore to recreate this for me. I did not end up doing that, to be clear.
Okay.
But it seemed to be at an intersection of plausible, neglected, and impactful.
Okay. And so at some point you decide to work on making this real. What's the actual process?
Yeah, I spent 5 or so years faffing about and trying to get other people to do this.
Hmm.
And then I eventually realized that no one would do it but me.
Okay.
And then chose to. The process at this point has been I negotiated a deal with Origenics in order to get the actual sample of their magic stuff. I spent a couple years like in communication with Hillman. I eventually just showed up at his front door with his permission.
Okay.
And we talked about what it would actually take to get this going, at which point I opened up a pre-seed round for family and friends and then invested a bunch of my own money in trying to rent the biolab, get like bioproduction going such that we could brew up 1,000 doses of this real quick.
Okay.
And we're currently experimenting with lyophilization and trying to get shelf stability.
With what? Lyophilization?
Yeah, freeze drying the bacteria. And because if it's eventually going to be a consumer product sold as a supplement or whatever, we will want it to be like Emergen-C, the vitamin C drink. Like we want it to show up as a dry powder that a person can then mix into water and then do their own application with.
Okay.
So currently we're experimenting with freeze drying it in the lab and ensuring that it like survives that process, because that's a rough time for bacteria.
Yeah, like I wouldn't have, like, you can't freeze dry me, right?
Yet.
So I'm surprised that I mean, I guess I have like organs and stuff like more than bacteria, but it's kind of surprising to me that this is even a thing you could plausibly do.
You can.
All right. So what, you just like take out the water and the bacteria just puts its life on pause for a while?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, literally the sample that we got from Origenics was frozen in their freezer for about 20 years. And it resurrected just fine when we just rubbed it on some agar and gave it the juice.
Okay. So there's some process of like, you know, getting this bacterium, trying to turn it into a powder, trying to mass produce it. So it sounded like a big problem that Origenics had in 2003 is difficulty in satisfying like the FDA in like FDA's requirements for safety testing.
Yeah.
Do you think that you'll have an easier time now? And if so, why?
I do think that the FDA has gotten more chill about GMO organisms in the last 20 years. It's been a while since Gattaca came out, so people are a little bit less hair trigger about that. Additionally, it is not certain to me that going the FDA route is best for this. Like, I see a couple different options where, and this is all up on our website for the 3 different like prongs of attack here, where either we create a derivative organism and try and do like just start from the beginning, go to the FDA, get something promising, and then hand the torch to Pfizer on that, is option A. Option B is we just go international. We just go to, for example, SIDSCO, India's FDA equivalent. And one upside of them is that instead of taking 10 years and $500 million, their FDA approval cost is like $20 million and 18 months.
Okay.
So that's a thing that plausibly OpenPhil could fund. That's a thing that we could possibly fund ourselves if we are making a lot of money, where it's not really intended to make money. The SIDSCO angle, it is intended to cure cavities for everyone forever.
Okay.
Because if this thing costs, I don't know, 70 cents a dose to produce in India, then it's kind of gray market legal everywhere. The same way that like Canadian pharmaceuticals or modafinil from South America or all those Russian gray market peptides are legal.
Gotcha. And you said OpenPhil earlier. OpenPhil is Open Philanthropy, a project that basically gives money to improve the world.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So option 1 was create a derivative organism, sell to Pfizer. Option 2 was licensed in other countries. Was there a third prong?
Yeah. Option 3 is sell it as a supplement, basically.
Okay. Which
is currently the one that we are doing the most traction on because it's the one that's easy to start fast. We don't have to do much tinkering in the lab in order to create a novel patentable derivative organism for this. And we don't have to put down the huge amounts of money for getting through SIDSCO. We only need to get it generally recognized as safe, GRAS certified, and then brew up a bunch of it and start selling.
Okay.
We may, in fact, start selling in Prospera in like 6 weeks.
Interesting.
And that's done under the laws of Roatan, the micronation in Honduras, rather than even the American GRAS certification.
Okay. Sorry, 6 weeks from when we're recording this, or 6 weeks from when you expect this to be released?
I have some uncertainty on the date of actual.
Okay.
Let me leave that deliberately vague.
All right. So when you say you're planning on like selling it as a dietary supplement, not all medicines are sold as dietary supplements, right? So I imagine that at some point, if you talk about how your product will, say, cure cavities.
I'm not confident it will cure cavities.
Okay.
I think that to my understanding of it, I think it will.
Okay.
But I'm trying not to make bold medical claims or claim like the FDA agrees with me on any of this. I did say these statements have not been approved by the FDA.
Okay.
This is less. There are rather a few companies already doing this, like similar to how the overregulation of therapists has caused this whole like shadow industry of coaches to spring up. I think that the overregulation from the FDA has caused supplement space to really expand, where there's a couple different companies that are currently selling a GMO bacteria that has, I would say, therapeutic effects, selling it as a supplement. And those are Z-Biotics, Bened Life, Flore, Activia has a GMO bacteria in their yogurt, which is intended to promote gut health. I think the FDA actually dinged them for saying this is going to promote gut health, but did not ding them for including GMO lactobacillus in their yogurt.
Okay. Why doesn't literally every drug come out as a dietary supplement? Like,
I mean, there's a lot of advantages to being to receiving the blessing of the FDA. Like, we're not going to hit really impressive market perfusion if we never get an FDA stamp.
Okay.
Like, just because something is selling real well among the rationalists, like modafinil or whatever, is a very different like market share than this is as boring and as ubiquitous as the diphtheria vaccine. Like, a thing that if our civilization was sane and competent and skilled, this would be in the mouths of every child, like at age 3. It would just be like rubbed onto the teeth once, then you eat some candy to activate it. And now, congratulations, kid, come back in 15 years for a redose. You are set. No more cavities.
Okay.
We don't do that. And that's a shame. And currently, unless we get some kind of FDA blessing, we are unlikely to ever hit that level of legitimacy, fully approved. Everyone in the world gets this.
Okay. So you mentioned these 3 prongs for potentially getting approved. And then how? Yeah. So the actual like delivery mechanism. So somebody gets some powder. You said it's like less than $1 to make, you reckon, for an individual dose?
I was speculating that once we get up to scale, it'll be less than $1 to make. It is currently very much more than $1 to make.
Okay. Like 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000?
It's closer to 100 currently, although a lot of that is going to be amortized because a lot of it has been like buying gigantic bioreactors and whatnot.
So at scale, maybe it costs less than $1 to make. What does somebody actually do to get your bacterium on their teeth?
It is currently unclear how effectively it colonizes if you don't get your teeth like really cleaned beforehand.
Okay.
I am thinking that there's probably maybe 3 different methods of application, which are either you swish with chlorhexidine real quick, which is just like a effective mouthwash, and brush your teeth to get the bacteria, dead. At which point you then, I think, stir up our powder in some water, let it sit for a minute to come to life, and then rub it on. Just brush your teeth with it, basically.
Okay.
Or you can just get your teeth cleaned at a dentist. That would probably work. Or if you want, you could grab a Profi brush yourself. They're like $70 off Amazon.
Okay.
And then just plug it into the wall and polish your teeth properly.
Okay. So roughly it looks like using this as toothpaste with some initial step of getting other things off. You
need to get it clean first, or else I think the home field advantage of S-Mutans native will just outcompete. But yes, just brush your teeth with it like a toothpaste.
Okay. And an additional thing you mentioned is that it sounded like if you wanted to make profit off this, you would need to come up with your own derivative strain that could be patented. Was that right?
That would certainly help. If we want to do any kind of strategy of exiting to a pharma company and letting them carry it through the FDA, which I would really like to cure cavities for everyone forever. That sounds really nice. And I don't want to be the one to try to carry this through the biomedical valley of death. Like, I don't want to try and do the 10-year slog because timelines, and also because that has broken better companies than ours, I think. It's a very expensive and very frustrating process.
Okay.
So yeah, creating derivative IP and then exiting to a pharma company seems like a sane strategy for trying to cure cavities for everyone.
Sure. So I guess a question I have about that is, it sounds like there's this existing bacterium.
Yep.
Presumably creating derivative IP would involve like making some changes to the genome that would not change its effectiveness very much.
Hillman has actually given me a couple unpublished designs for a superior strain.
Okay. So the idea is that the derivative bacterium, it would not only be different from this existing thing, but it would be better, superior. Which is why somebody doesn't just copy the thing you copied from rather than copying you.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. So you mentioned that our company, I think you used the phrase like our company or whatever, referring to Lantern Bioworks.
Yeah.
Is it just you right now, or have you got like...
I've been working with a couple people pretty closely. Brute Biolabs and Len Koshik out of there has been invaluable for this. Okay. He's the person doing all the bioproduction on this. Also, I have a pretty robust advisory team of Dr. Jeffrey Hillman and Ayla, you might have heard.
Okay.
Two renowned dentists. Yeah.
For people who aren't familiar, so Dr. Jeffrey Hillman, it sounded like that was the
original inventor. He's currently 75 and retired. Okay. He is I think, dentist and microbiologist.
Is Ayla a dentist?
I can't confirm that Ayla is not a dentist.
Okay. For those who are unfamiliar, to my knowledge, she is not a dentist. But I'm sure she has many skills, as many non-dentists do. If people are interested in following updates from your company or like what you personally have been doing, how should they do that?
Me personally, I have like 6 different completely siloed careers, Daniel. So I'm not going to tell anyone how to. I mean, you can go to Jamie Wahls, the writer. That's Wahls. I regret every day that is not phonetic. JamieWalls.com to follow my writing career. I'm not telling you about several of the other careers.
Okay.
And you can check out Lantern Bioworks at lanternbioworks.com. We have a whole website. There's a sign-up form if you want to be subscribed to our newsletter. Tough, we don't have one. It's investors only.
All right. Well, thanks for appearing on the filing cabinet.
Yeah. Glad to be here.